I watched every first episode of every new anime that's come out in spring 2022, and if I had to pick the one thing that I learned most while venturing through this hellscape watching all of this weeaboo garbage, it's that a lot of it isn't actually garbage at all, and that might sound like a good thing in this kind of dry, uninteresting anime season, but it's actually a very, very bad thing, because bad things are fun, but boring things, the kind of things that go in one ear and out the other, those are not fun. Those are what we call wasting your life away. So today I'm going to do my best to overview every single anime that's come out in the spring season and break them into 3 categories. The shows that you should check out, the shows that you should not check out, and the shows in between that you may or may not want to watch at 3 in the morning if you're eating some cereal and just have nothing better to do. No sequels here because do you really need me to tell you what to think about Kaguya-sama Season 3? And just remember, at the end of the day, I'm just one dude with my own preferences and tastes, so if you see something in here and it looks like something you're really interested in but I'm just shitting all over it, just go watch it, my dude. All of this is in good fun, and I would be very happy if you found something that you liked because I was trashing on it, and it would actually mean that my copious, near lethal amounts of anime consumption this past week was actually worth something. We've got a lot of anime to dive through, so let's jump into it. Love After World Domination is a classic forbidden love rom-com between the leader of a Super Sentai squad of heroes and a minion commander in some evil overlord army, as they both fight each other while simultaneously try to keep their relationship a secret from each other's sides. It really kind of just sells itself listening to the premise, and I promise you that the execution is just as fun and adorable as you would hope. There's lots of little details and moments that make this mushy, wholesome romance even mushier and wholesomer, and I don't always have the best eye for this, but from episode 1, it seems like they have a rein on this concept in a way that it won't be getting stale or repetitive anytime soon. Another romance series that I'm actually enjoying quite a lot this season is the one that everyone decided they were a fan of before it even came out. Shikimori-san's Not Just a Cutie does the impossible 2 times in a row this season with a romance series that, get this, actually has the characters together by the beginning of the story. I mean, what? What am I watching here? And it doesn't end there because Shikimori seems to have watched some of my other YouTube videos and knows that I absolutely despise sitting through the predictable setup phase of bringing all the characters that you see in the opening together over half the series until we can just finally, after waiting half the series, finally start exploring those dynamics between those characters. Shikimori smartly starts in the second year of all these students' lives. The main character Izumi already has his girlfriend Shikimori, they both have their own friend groups, and we immediately begin getting into these interactions and dynamics between the cast. I do wish the relationship was a bit less distant than it is, but I guess they needed something to develop over this series, so I'll take what I can get. But if you just want another wholesome romance series with a good attention to the details that make you like these characters, shout out to this last part of the ED where Izumi protects Shikimori from this ball, then you can't go wrong with this one. So back-to-back bangers right off the bat. I'm a little bit surprised. Maybe this season is pretty good, am I right? Wrong. Trapped in a Dating Sim is one of the worst premieres I've had the unfortunate experience of watching this season, and maybe just showing you what this series looks like will be enough to turn you away, and if so, I'm glad. But for those of you who aren't convinced, just imagine a series, an isekai, I might add, about a dude who gets teleported into an otome game as an NPC character and has to work his way up with his knowledge of the game to become some epic Chad who gets his harem of not that attractive waifus. Now that might sound pretty awesome, and that's because it was already done pretty goddamn well by My Next Life as a Villainess. And you wanna know why that series worked? Because it has characters with personalities and writing. All things that Trapped in a Dating Sim lack. There is not even an attempt to characterize this main protagonist beyond some cool guy who can do anything, spout extremely dumb one-liners, and end up screwing over the people who look down on him. And they can't even make that part satisfying. Seriously, unless you're just extremely desperate for a premise surrounding some otome game, I suggest staying far away from this because it has to be one of the worst premiere episodes I've watched this entire season. Second only really to... Oh no. No! No! Anything but that! Please! Wow, this name sucks. Holy shit. Miss Shachiku and the Little Baby Ghost may look like an anime. It may sound like an anime. It may even feel like an anime. But it is not an anime. There are no characters in Shachiku. There are no plot points. There's no writing. There is nothing. I cannot stress this enough. There's quite literally nothing in Miss Shachiku and the Little Baby Ghost. It is a premiere, and I assume series, that is so obsessed with making you realize that this little baby yokai is just so moe and so kawaii that they forgot to write an actual series surrounding that. This is the only first episode that I actually struggled to finish from this season. I think I had to call my therapist at one point in the middle, and I have to make an entirely new special category below the one I already had for non-recommendations, just to tell you, do not watch this. However, before you write in the comments telling me how wrong I am, if you are looking for some moe kawaii pandering this season, but also want, you know, characters and writing, then maybe consider checking out Aharon-san wa Hakaranai. Butchered Japanese pronunciation aside, this is a pretty enjoyable and pretty wholesome healing series about two characters who struggle to make friends for different reasons, coming together and having cute moe interactions that fill your heart with warmth. Now, it is healing, it is Yashike, which means it's pretty slow and uneventful, but the characters are likable enough and their interactions are adorable enough where you'll probably have a good time even in spite of that. But if we're talking about healing, if healing is something that you think you need in your life right now at this point in time, then there's only one thing I have to recommend. Healer Girl is far and away my favorite anime that I have watched from the spring 2022 anime season. And it does have the advantage that I've actually been keeping up with it every single week. The episodes just get better and better, the dynamics, the writing, the comedy, but even from episode 1, I could tell that this series was something special, and how you feel about it will probably come down to how open you are to musicals. Healer Girl is about a group of girls training under a clinic that literally, I am not joking here, literally heals people through singing. And right away, I hope not, but right away, you might be raising an eyebrow at this just because the premise sounds pretty silly, pretty absurd, and pretty childish. But, that's where you would be led astray, because the premise is indeed all of those things that I just mentioned, but that's exactly what gives Healer Girl its charm, its whimsy, and its fun. In the broadest way I can possibly describe it, Healer Girl is a shenanigan-filled musical that embraces all of that silliness, all of that love for music and singing, in a way that is just infectiously joyful, and something that I honestly haven't seen done in this way, to this capacity, with this much soul, maybe ever. And instead of just trying to describe it and convince you through my words, I think it would be better to just show you. These are the moments that really make Healer Girl stand apart. These are the moments that truly embody what is making this series so special. There is just an immaculate, palpable love and passion for music in this series, and the way they convey that to the audience is just so wonderful. There are performances and arrangements already in this series that have put tears in my eyes. They're so good. And yet on the other hand, there's performances and little musical numbers that have made me laugh out loud because of their writing, because of the voice actors, and the sincerity that they present these really silly and joyful set pieces with, some of which apparently were even just straight up ad-libbed by the voice actors in the studio. You can just clearly tell, plain as day, that the people behind this series, the VAs, the animators, the directors, everyone is just having a blast making this thing, and it truly shows through all of the work that's been put in so far. And even musical numbers aside, this is a series that would still stand out this season due to its excellent writing and extremely entertaining dialogue between all of the characters, especially once you have the full cast introduced. You start having the Sonia interactions and the Shinobu interactions. The series just becomes even more entertaining and even more fun to watch in a way that I didn't think was possible. It's just the best, man. It's such a feel-good, immensely entertaining, and delightful series to watch, and it's the only series this season where I have been actively anticipating each new episode every single week. So, if you take any series out of this video to give a chance, despite any preconception or word you might have heard about it, please let it be this one, because unlike me, I do know a few people who weren't as into the first episode, and especially the singing aspect, until the following episodes, where it starts being used in more interesting and funnier ways. So your mileage may vary. I loved it from the very first musical scene, but this one might be one where you want to give it another episode or two before deciding it's not your thing, because it definitely feels like this series is going really under the radar, really underrated, in a way that is tragic for how special and wonderful it actually is. However, if you're the kind of person who heard the word healer and instantly got excited about me mentioning some lame fantasy JRPG series, well, first off, just no, do not encourage this kind of behavior. But second, unfortunately, I'm ashamed to say that there is actually a series like that airing this season, and I'm even more ashamed to say that I actually kinda liked it. Kono Healer Mendokusai, or Don't Hurt Me, My Healer, I'm not exactly fluent in Japanese, but that seems like a weird localization, is actually one of the funnier series I've watched this spring. It's not gonna blow you away or anything. I'm even kind of struggling to say that it's good in retrospect, but there is some weirdly fun and enjoyable duo comedy in here between these two main characters. It's got this dry wit and cynicism to it that reminds me a lot of Konosuba, actually, just, you know, nowhere near as good. If that sounds like something up your alley, then maybe give it a shot, I don't know. And that kind of leads us into an entire subgenre of anime that I've been keeping track of this season, which is the group of I don't knows, the group of fantasy JRPG-like anime that I also happen to be extremely passive towards. There's nothing I love more than anime that just failed to leave any kind of impression at all. I'm Quitting Heroing had a good premise that basically sold itself about a socially outcast hero who decides to join the villains, but unfortunately just dragged itself out to the point where the joke became increasingly unfunny. The Greatest Demon Lord is Reborn as a typical nobody, on the other hand, had the opposite issue, where I started off watching this in a straight-up coma, but actually got weirdly invested in this awkward Demon Lord child just trying to make friends. Unfortunately, that charm only happens in about a couple of scenes, and the rest is the aforementioned coma-inducing fantasy shenanigans. But if they lean back on that social awkwardness more in future episodes, I could see this being a pretty chill time. RPG Real Estate is exactly what it sounds like, but despite having the groundwork for a pretty fun and unique sounding series, there is almost zero cleverness or ingenuity to be found in this series, and instead they replaced it with pandering to the max. It does have some good vibes and some charming interactions, but just go in expecting this premise not to live up to its potential. The Dawn of the Witch, on the other hand, contrasted to all of the fantasy garbage that's been mentioned so far, is actually kind of adept at what it's doing. The pace is good, there's relatively natural progression into the world, the characters seem fun, this one is mine, but at the end of the day, it's still just the same trite fantasy garbage, just with a little bit more skill and a little bit more talent. However, in this group of fantasy mid that barely registers on a spectrum, there's actually been 2 other series that have actually left an impression on me on both ends. And why don't we start with the actually good one? Because I feel like I've been overly negative the past couple minutes in a way where people will just call me a hater. The Executioner and Her Way of Life is that rare kind of isekai that pops up every once or twice a year where you watch it, I watch it, and I probably make some dumb joke about how isekai has finally come up with a new idea. So isekai has finally come up with a new idea where the premise revolves around these transportations, the actual isekai part of this isekai, and it's actually a recurring and ordinary part of this fantasy world. Regular Japanese people are teleported here all the time to the point where the culture and the state of the world has changed because of it. Now, I don't want to get too deep into what this series is about, because going into this blind and being surprised by some of the twists and reveals that happen is one of the coolest parts about it, but rest assured there is immediately a lot of potential in the way this world has been set up, the way the characters have been introduced, and where the story could be taken in the future. And above all, after watching so much trash this season, it's just so nice to have one of these kinds of shows actually have some kind of narrative hook to it, a thrust into the story. It feels like it's becoming increasingly common to just watch a first episode, finish it, and go, I guess that was it. I don't think that's something you'll be saying after watching this. Definitely check it out if you're looking for a quality fantasy isekai series in the midst of all the other garbage. And garbage there is, which leads us to the other end of the spectrum with maybe, other than Otome Game, maybe the worst fantasy series that I've watched from this season. Skeleton Knight in Another World is about a skeleton knight in another world, and I haven't looked too deeply into the reception for this series, but if I had to take a guess, I feel like this might be one of the series that people disagree with me most over. I mean, how can you not like it? It's got a funny skeleton bro, it's got a Pelix Sung OP, it's got waifus, it's got Wait, I don't think I was supposed to mention that last part. The issue for me is that despite the general foundation here actually having some level of potential, I mean, I'm not some killjoy. I can appreciate a fun, silly fantasy journey with some Skelebro just goofing around and saving people with his overpowered abilities. The issue is that there's just nothing to elevate that concept here. There's no interesting writing, the jokes and comedy are extremely dull, the characters are flat, there's just nothing going on here to make that initially promising concept actually entertaining. But if you are looking for a fun comedic concept that is actually elevated by its writing, then look no further than ya boy, Kong Ming. And yes, that is the actual name of this series. Don't even think for a second that I would be messing around with something this serious. The immediate hook with this show, other than just the opening, which is pure flames, is that you're watching this renowned military strategist from the Three Kingdoms era be transported into modern times and wind up helping a struggling singer actually reach people with her music. And if that kind of novelty was all this series had going for it, I would probably be saying the same thing about it that I did about Skeleton Knight. However, thankfully, this show has actual writers behind it, and writers who are quite good at what they do. Because I'll be honest, Kong Ming, the titular character himself, that character could be absolutely anybody. What really has me invested in this series so far is the incredibly endearing and passionate struggle of the other main character, Eiko, and even more than that, the wholesome, fun dynamic that she ends up having with Kong Ming. It's a very wholesome, very funny series so far, and it's also one of the ones that I'm most optimistic for in terms of landing as well as it started. And that's always a risk with these seasonal videos, is recommending something that just so happens to have a great first episode, but ends up failing spectacularly by the end of the story, and I'm the one who ends up looking like a buffoon. However, thankfully this season there's something I can recommend wholeheartedly beginning to end as a mini movie of sorts called Summer Ghost. This one really went under my radar until I saw some people talking about it, and I'm glad that they did, because Summer Ghost is one of the better things that I've seen this entire season, and it's about a group of 3 kids who meet up to research and discover the truth behind a rumor that the ghost of a girl can be seen at this abandoned airline. And really the premise is more of a catalyst to explore these 3 kids themselves and the trauma and personal problems that they're dealing with in their own life. And I'm just going to warn you right now, it does get very heavy, it does deal with some very thematically mature material, but in the end, I think it was all handled very tastefully, and despite some overly fast pacing at points, they tell a very complete and emotionally satisfying experience in the span of about 35 minutes. Summer Ghost isn't the only Dark Summer related anime this season though, and that leads us to another one of my favorite premieres this spring, Summertime Render. Now, I don't know anything about this source or its influences, but what I do know is that if you are a fan of thriller mysteries, and more specifically, thriller mysteries along the lines of Higurashi or Shiki, then this anime will be right up your alley, and thankfully I am a fan of both of those series, and I am also a fan of this so far. Right away, there's a very compelling and intense atmosphere as the main character Shinpei starts investigating into the death of his childhood friend in this small community on a small island. And that small community part is exactly where the Higurashi and Shiki comparisons come from. Just like in those stories, having this murder mystery thriller set in such a small and intimate setting is exactly what makes it even more unsettling and disturbing the more you uncover about this story and these characters. Unfortunately, mysteries are some of the hardest stories to really nail by the conclusion, so this series definitely has its work cut out for it, but the introduction here is so strong that I would be ashamed not to recommend this right now.
柴崎愛蔵です。よろしく。染谷裕次郎です。高校生活一緒に楽しく過ごしましょう。
Yeah, this one's a winner, alright. Heroines Run the Show was a pleasant surprise for me. I won't say it was excellent, I won't say it was great, but for a premise that I kind of wrote off immediately as Fujo pandering with this girl who ends up as the producer for two male idols, it was actually a decent amount of fun. There's some good interactions in here, a kind of fruits basket-y kind of setup with the potential love triangle and friend group setup, and for whatever reason, I looked a little bit into this series, and it turns out that it's actually a part of a massive cinematic universe called the Confession Executive Committee, so that's a thing too, I guess. Overall, I would say Heroines was good, but not quite good enough for a full emphatic recommendation if you feel me there, but it's close enough that I'll just say, check it out if you're interested. Another series I feel similarly about is Birdie Wing Golf Girl's Story, and if you know me, or know my channel to any capacity and watch this beforehand, you would probably think something along the lines of, hey, this is something Phenom Sage would like. It's weird, it's nonsense, it's over the top, and it's a gambling golf series that takes all of that nonsense 100% seriously. This is right in line with anime that I love, like Keijo or High School of the Dead. The issue is that it's just nowhere near as good as those series. It's not even close. And it all comes down to the execution. And I won't even speak on the visuals because obviously this is not a very attractive looking series, but the problems go much deeper than that. As much as I love the campiness and over-the-top nonsense that can be found in this series, it's almost like parts of the series aren't aware of what kind of story they're in. You'll have a ridiculous golfing scene where the main character threads a golf ball in between a moving train, and then in the very next scene it becomes this incredibly self-serious and relatively dull family drama. If it can make those aspects more cohesive, if it can embrace the nonsense even in the not nonsensical scenes, I will say that this series does have potential in the long run. Another show that I want to say has potential despite a pretty lackluster premiere is Dance Dance Danseur. I don't even know if I said that right, but conceptually I like a lot of what this series is seemingly trying to do in this episode 1. I like people chasing their dreams, I like when those dreams happen to be about things that aren't explored as often in anime, I like the messages about breaking gender stereotypes and doing what you're passionate about. The issues start rising when you actually get into this episode and you see the really awkward, jumbled introduction to the main character and how his journey to chasing that dream actually begins. I mean, I just can't really get excited in the first episode with a main character who continually refuses to do this thing that he loves, and he keeps getting roped along anyways without any kind of agency or motivation in the story. I know, you can tell me all you want, I know that is the point of what they're doing in this first episode, but it's just handled so bizarrely and so clumsily that it was difficult becoming fully invested in this first episode. That being said, I do expect this one to get better later down the line, so if a dancing shows where your heart is at right now, you could definitely do worse than checking this one out. And by worse, I mean you could be watching another Chase Your Dream sports series this season called Love All Play. More like Hate All Play, am I right? No, really, this one actually just kind of sucks a lot. What you have here is a pretty mediocre to okay sports shonen setup that is just buried underneath the most soulless and miscalculated execution imaginable. Instant solutions to problems, weird structuring of events that make the payoffs that are being led up to extremely unsatisfying, and just some of the most, I'm not even exaggerating, some of the most unnatural character writing I have seen in recent memory. There is an incredibly slim chance that this could get better once the whole team is established, but honestly, I am not counting on it. Rounding out this weird niche of sports dramas this season about plucky B-shonens chasing after their dreams, we have Fanfare of Adolescence, which I would actually say is probably the best out of the three of them, if for no other reason that it has actual talent behind the scenes. This show is brought to us by the director of Bloom Into You, and again, if you followed me for a little bit, you know that I absolutely adore that series, and one of the strongest aspects about it was its direction, not just visually, but the way scenes are structured, paced, the music choices in each moment, all super well done in Bloom Into You, and while I wouldn't say Fanfare is on that level, at least not yet, there's definitely been sparks of greatness that remind me, oh yeah, this is handled by a really good director. The story itself also has a lot more potential than either of the past two shows I mentioned, and it helps that the main character actually has some kind of, compelling stakes and angle for chasing after this dream of horse riding. So overall, I'm mildly optimistic about this one, and I am looking forward to seeing how it turns out. All of that being said, I have two shows that I have been waiting to talk about this entire video. One show that I know all of you have been waiting for me to talk about this entire video, and four other shows unrelated to either of them that I genuinely have very little to actually say about. So if you don't mind, I'm bringing back the fabled lightning round. 3, 2, 1, let's jam. Shadowverse Flame had the most inoffensive non-recommendation of the season. It's an established card game property for all the things that entails, but it's also just generally extremely unremarkable, other than this one shot where the kid shows he's been keeping this hot waifu captive in his Digifriend book. I don't know what that was about. However, it's still better than the way that they treat friends in Tomodachi Game, a kind of overdone but potentially really interesting mind game battle series where for once in this kind of series the stakes aren't the actual lives of the contestants, at least as far as I know, but rather the bonds and relationships that all of them have formed over their lives. It could be really dope in the long run, but it's kind of hard to tell right now. Another one that's hard to tell with right now is In the Heart of Kunoichi Tsubaki, a premiere about female ninja who absolutely refuse to get close to men, but also have a weird fixation on them. I can't lie, the premise and the gags got extremely repetitive and dull by the end, but this is one of those series that has just enough charm that if they start exploring some different angles, beef up the dynamics a bit, it could turn into a really chill and fun time. Our last mention though is the definition of a chill and fun time, and I think I'll let the voice actors themselves say the name. Well, close enough. Onipan is about a group of Onis who want to dispel the misconceptions and prejudice surrounding their race by helping out being do-gooders, and participating in weirdly excellent animation sequences. I was hoping for this to be a lot funnier than it was, but there's still definitely a very warm and comfortable feeling you get from watching, aided no less by this group of completely amateur voice actors, which ironically makes them stand out and feel even more special than they would have otherwise. That was a lot of talking for a lot of shows you're probably not going to watch, but I did all of this deliberately because I wanted to end on, other than Healer Girl, my two favorite series that I've watched from this spring anime season. Daimon is the kind of understated and low-key introduction that I expect will fool a lot of people into thinking this isn't really anything that special, and while I can kind of understand that perspective on the most shallow level imaginable, you would still be an absolute buffoon for thinking this, because it's one of the best and most endearing introductions we've gotten to a cast of characters and the general premise surrounding them all season. Daimon is a found family story, oh, you know how I love those found family stories, about a girl who has been abandoned by her father and taken in by a local family who runs a sweets and pastry restaurant. At the same time, a 30-something-year-old son of that same family comes back when his father is hospitalized, and a story of these two characters bonding and living under this same house ensues. Plot synopsis over, and right away what I can say this story gets immediately right is that character aspect, that family-oriented character writing that just feels so natural and so rewarding as a viewer even within this very first episode. There is such a strong sense of setup, payoff, and just little bits of characterization that attach you to these two main characters in a way that other anime just completely fail at. Things that might even seem a little bit basic, like this girl starting off cold, but having a natural and gradual arc to opening up to this dude. Really simple and fundamental things just handled with extreme precision and very good execution. Another thing I love is that there's also a big Hanasaku Iroha vibe with the overall premise surrounding these ideas of family legacy, succession, and just those kinds of intergenerational bonds overall. So right up my alley, of course. If you watched that Top 10 2021 anime video, big Hanasaku Iroha fan, and I hope that this series lives up to its very strong introductory potential. However, enough stalling, enough baiting, enough talking about these series nobody cares about. I know what you've all been waiting for, and I'm here to give you the definitive opinion on it. Spy X Family, Spy Family, Spy Fam, whatever you want to call it, is the absolute #1 standout of this anime season. It was the only thing I was actually anticipating ahead of time. The manga has a beloved cult following, the adaptation is finally here, and you want to know what I thought about it? It was pretty good. Thanks for watching, everybody. Okay, for real, Spy Family is kind of one of those things that you don't even need me to say anything about. It's a given that I love it, it's a given that everybody loves it, and it's something that stands out to me for, even more so than the content itself, this concept of being instantly iconic and instantly mainstream in a way that everyone can appreciate. This is one of those few normie-friendly, excellent anime series that we've gotten recently where there's just absolutely zero anime bullshit. No pandering, no turnoffs, just pure, unadulterated fun that everyone can enjoy. Well, everyone except for the weirdos on TikTok who have never been held as a child. And what I think makes this series so universally appealing is just this giant understanding of what people think is cool, what people think is adorable and wholesome, and knowing how to combine those things in a way that is not only cohesive, it has to congeal, it has to flow into something good, but also something that represents the best parts of those things. Spies, Lloyd kicking ass and saving his daughter, that's awesome. Lloyd being a relatively distant person but developing and growing a bond with this daughter he's taken in, adorable. Wholesome, endearing, it's just made for success, man. You already know how I love these aforementioned found family stories. Anya is adorable, there's a wit, no pun intended, and cleverness to all of the dialogue, the pacing is breakneck in a good way. It's just the complete package, man, and this being based on a celebrated manga means that I think it's pretty safe to say that unlike most of the series I've talked about here, I'm confident that this will stay excellent all the way up to its end. The too long didn't watch of all this video is that you should absolutely be watching Spy Family, Daemon, and especially Healer Girl if you want to be watching the absolute best that this season has to offer. And hey, there's a lot of other cool stuff too, a lot of not so cool stuff, and a handful of shows that you absolutely should not watch under any circumstance. Join the Discord in the description if you want to hang out and talk with me or other people about this season's anime. Thank you so much for watching, I love you all, and I will see you in the next video.